Welcome back. Today I'm going to take a look at a massive role-playing game released in 1991 by Reline Software. Fate, Gates of Dawn. When asked about the best RPG for the Amiga, a certain group of people always includes Fate Gates of Dawn. Specifically, those people who actually have played the game. And really, I would include Fate in my personal Amiga RPG's top 10 list as well. It's a truly epic and very ambitious game, which, of course, has its problems as well. One of the more severe problems was its lack of distribution outside of Germany. There is an English version, which you can see in my video, but I have never been able to find it. Apparently, there were just a couple dozen English packages ever produced, and thus the English version is probably one of the rarest Amiga games ever. The game starts rather unspectacularly, with your character named Winwood standing alone in the wilderness. As the manual tells us, he was transported into a parallel universe by the evil wizard Tharden, and just escaped Tharden's goons, who burnt down the inn in which Winwood had appeared. Your goal is obviously to defeat the evil wizard and find a way back to your own world. Now, right at the beginning of the game, you are quite lost, not only because you're standing in the midst of a vast wilderness, but because the game doesn't tell you what exactly you are supposed to do. The well-written backstory in the manual tells you a few things, but nothing really helpful. So you wander aimlessly through the wilderness until you find a road. Following it leads to the rather large city of Larvin, where you can start looking for companions. Yes, in Fate, you do not create characters like in other role-playing games. Instead, you recruit people strolling through the city. This way, you'll soon have a couple of companions and learn about the first thing you have to do. There is a subway of sorts, which the people call the cave train, that stopped running because the spirits powering the train are missing. Unfortunately, Larvin is surrounded by tall mountains, so that your only chance of going further is to get the cave train working again. The game can be divided into 13 such main quests, and thankfully, once you get into the flow of the game, subsequent quests are much more comprehensible and easier to solve. But the rather slow and unguided beginning is really a huge obstacle to enjoy the game and leaves you scratching your head for the first couple of hours. Today, with the internet providing maps and hints, this shouldn't be such a big deal anymore. Speaking of maps, the game does provide a mapping feature. It's far from a convenient automap though. By using a jewel, or a later level enchanter spell, you are shown your immediate vicinity, no matter if you have been there or not. It doesn't show doors or special buildings though, so it's of limited use. And really, I only use it to find my position on a map I've downloaded from some website. These are usually in German, but since all inns and taverns and whatnot have the same English names in the German version, the maps are still very helpful. The thing is, as I've said at the beginning, this game is huge. And I mean huge. Really, just look at the wilderness, or overworld if you will. There are also a couple of islands which you can explore once you can afford to buy a boat. Cities are equally as huge. Just look at this map of Larvin. So, if you are one of these guys who believe that drawing their own maps is part of the fun, prepare to have a whole lot of, fun. By now you might have noticed that the game's graphics are certainly not breathtaking, and honestly, you had seen better on the Amiga even in 1991. They are still adequate though, and the pseudo 3D works very well. There are a few design choices that I personally think were not quite as elaborated as they could have been. The worst thing is the graphic set that is used when in a city. The windowless log cabins look, well, quite a bit disappointing. This is certainly not how I imagine a bustling metropolis like Larvin. But when you think that the game came on just two 3.5-inch floppy disks, each only having around 800 kilobytes, it is truly astonishing what Reline managed to cram onto them. There is nothing to complain about the sound. Sure, there is no music during the game, but there are some really good sound effects to make up for it. Besides your own footsteps, you can hear footsteps of everyone around you, and fitting sound effects for the ever-changing weather, which changes what NPCs and how many of them you encounter. And of course, there are the fighting sound effects, which consists mostly of weapon slashes, groans and spells. Whenever a fight starts, the game switches from real-time to turn-based, giving you ample time to decide what you want to do. A good strategy decides over life and death, especially if you fight against multiple enemy groups. A minor complaint I have about fights are the rather small menus you choose your actions from. It happens every now and then that you barely miss the line with your desired action and click on the one above or beneath by mistake. And while this is essentially true for all of Fate's menus, it applies especially to fights and to conversations with NPCs. You can talk to almost all NPCs that wander around the world of Fate, unless they want to kill you first, of course. And these conversations usually always go the same. First, you chat a bit to make your conversation partner like you, and then you ask specific questions. These questions are not as specific as you might hope, though, as you can only generally ask about subjects like persons, beings, or help and stuff. Because of that, it might feel a lot more tedious to gain the information you need. And sometimes you might click on the wrong line and insult an NPC who will leave angrily, or even attack you. During these conversations, you can also recruit an NPC if he likes you enough. You can have up to 7 party members in your group and up to 4 groups, which means you can have 28 characters in total. It is a good idea, however, to only have 3 groups, as you are often required to split your party in a dungeon. This makes for some of the best puzzles in the game. Fate Gates of Dawn is one of these games that become more and more fun the longer you play. And make no mistake, the game is long. I've known people who played with a cheated party and a walkthrough and still needed about 70 hours to finish the game. In 1991, a German gamer named Jürgen Koppmann made the world record of marathon gaming by playing nothing else but Fate for 166 hours. And as far as I know, he still holds this record today. I assume that after 50 hours of continued gaming, the poor guy didn't understand anything about the really great story anymore. And that's truly a shame, because the game manages to make the world feel alive with its complexity, dynamic weather, traveling NPCs and elaborately designed dungeons. Add to this complex companions, each with their own likes and dislikes, micromanagement that's well balanced between complex and laborious, a surprisingly tactical combat system, and a smart hint system in which your companions start to give you valuable clues when the game notices that you are lost. Sadly, the announced DOS version of the game was never finished, and so there are just the Amiga and Atari ST versions. While both are essentially the same, the Atari ST only uses 16 colors instead of the 32 the Amiga uses, so I highly recommend the Amiga version. If you like complex old-school RPGs, then there's really no way around this game. You simply have to give it a try. And I highly recommend to ignore your pride and get yourself some maps and maybe a couple of starting hints from the internet. You will enjoy the game just so much more.